Dungeons & Dragons. You know it, I know it, your mom knows it, the bully who picked on you in 3rd grade knows it, so there's no reason to explain what it is, but if you do, here is a perfect summarization of why people love it.
The Eye of Odin opens up. 16 titties fall out.
Yeah!
In terms of the MMO scene, there is a Dungeons & Dragons Online that was released back on February 28th, 2006. At least that's what Wikipedia tells me. DDO is a free-to-play theme park MMO that is honestly quite faithful to the pen and paper board game. It has all the things you'd like to see, like the classes, races, dice rolls, story bits, locations, and all that good shit. Of course, since it's an MMO that's 15 years old at this point, it's a ghost town nowadays. Okay, it's not completely dead, but much like many of the other weird red-headed stepchild MMORPGs I cover on this channel, it's not booming like, say, World of Warcraft. I've been playing it for a couple months now, as you can see since the last time I dropped a video on the channel, so I'm here to share my thoughts on DDO.
If you can but reach me, I will reward you for your noble efforts.
God damn it. So beginning with downloading the game and creating your account with Standing Stone Games, you are met with the login screen where you will begin your incredibly confusing journey through DDO's character creation. DDO has probably the most intensive character creation I've ever seen in an MMORPG. The amount of customization options here is absolutely staggering, ranging from class selection, race selection, role archetypes, ability point and skill point distribution, feats aka perk or passive skill selections. It goes on and on. Unless you've played the tabletop equivalent of Dungeons & Dragons or have a guide ready, all of these parameters are going to confuse the hell out of you. Thankfully, there are some choices in character creation that help guide you in making a character. Once you've spent the better part of an hour creating whatever you want to play, you can then name your character something like Sniffy Longbottom, a very appropriate D&D name.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair.
And enter the world of Dungeons & Dragons Online thereafter. Upon logging in, you are guided through a modest tutorial where you are taught the game's action combat system and various other mechanics like being able to short rest at shrines where you can recover health and spell slots. Another neat little nod to actual Dungeons & Dragons.
Ha! I still got plenty of stamina. I can go all night long.
Nice.
You'll also probably noticed how jank some of the game's physics are, as well as getting a feel of how dated this game is from its graphics and gameplay. It did release nearly 20 years ago after all. Moving on from the tutorial, you are spit out into your first town hub where you can take on various quests that all take place in a separated instance. DDO takes a largely instanced approach to its world where much of its gameplay loop is picking up quests and running through instanced dungeons. Each quest dungeon will challenge you with various monsters, puzzles, and exploration elements. As you creep higher in difficulty, you will also need to keep other details in mind, like resistances to certain damage types, your skills that allow you to spot traps or hidden passages. In some cases, you might even have to actually prepare for certain quests by bringing extra items or equipment that helps in that specific dungeon. This is less so important in the earlier levels, but in later quests where death is very possible, you'll want to do all you can to avoid it, since death is actually pretty punishing in this game. Not because you lose stuff when you die, but because usually dying means you have to start the quest all over. Since you can't just revive on the spot, you are forced to revive back wherever you binded to, usually far away if you forget to change your location like me. At least flavor-wise, you'll also be guided by the mythical Dungeon Master, much like an actual campaign of Dungeons & Dragons, without all the body odor and basement mold.
A strange shape charges towards you. Could this be the general manager?
I'd like to speak to the manager.
Once you have a few dungeons under your belt, you may wonder why you aren't leveling up normally. That's because DDO has a milestone leveling system. There are ranks that grant you talent points that can be spent in talent trees to power up your character besides the instant boost you get from a full level up. Anytime you have gone up a total of 5 ranks, you can level up, and even leveling has a ton of customization to it. Besides the talents, you can level up into a different class, try out different weapons, select various spells, which all change how you play. Keep in mind, building an off-the-wall character can completely suck in terms of power, but the fact that you can even change and mess with all these different parameters is incredibly fun to experiment with, much like the real Dungeons and Dragons. Other activities include the open world areas called wilderness maps that in all honesty are some of the most boring content. These wilderness maps are large open areas that have you finding points of interest, killing ridiculously easy boss creatures, and building up an entirely too high Slayer count for small amounts of experience compared to the dungeons you will be completing. The Slayer tasks do help complete achievements in your monster manual for extra bonus experience, but you can just as easily complete those achievements through quests. Unless you are a massive completionist, just stick to the quest dungeons. Admittedly, many of the early game dungeons, though, are pretty repetitive, usually only requiring you to do a menial task that takes 5 to 10 minutes. Once you get to higher levels, though, many of the quests can take as long as a half hour, especially at higher difficulties, which you'll want to do eventually. See, playing quests at higher difficulties not only makes the dungeon harder and reward more experience, it also earns more favor with various factions. Favor is the lifeblood of your career in DDO, and it's really confusing that none of this is really explained to you as a player. Earning favor with factions gives rewards based on various ranks in that faction. The rewards can be anything as mediocre as a dumb item shop to something permanent like a freaking full-on inventory tab. The favor system also rewards you cash shop currency as well as other permanent upgrades that in the long run save you from spending money in the game's cash shop. Kind of an important feature that just casually doesn't get explained. My tips for if you are planning to jump into DDO is to find a few guides online and familiarize yourself with some of the game's mechanics, as well as joining a friendly guild to play the game with. Guilds can provide a ton of extra benefits that will help you in the beginning of the game, so I definitely recommend jumping into one. Going into further features the game has would be crafting, but it's sort of confusing on how it's done. Or maybe I'm just dumb. Essentially, you break down items and then you can customize other items, but they have to be blank or something like that. Not sure. It confused the f out of me, but there are plenty of guides out there explaining how to get the most out of crafting for weapons and armor. There is PvP in DDO, but it's more or less an afterthought. Taverns have small areas you can duel in, or even queues you can sign up for with things like deathmatch or capture the flag, but unless you see a guild or something participating in some sort of self-made tournament, PvP looked pretty dead. Endgame in Dungeons and Dragons is probably the most interesting aspect to the game. There is some balls to the wall difficulty in this game for certain quests. I can't tell you how frustrated I was getting as a solo player trying to tackle some of these quests and just getting one-shotted by a stupid trap or something, or a dumb mage that was too far for me to attack because I'm an idiot fighter. You have got to be kidding me. Oh my god! Oh, I thought I was dead there. Oh, thank God. Even the NPC mercenaries you can hire don't help much since their AI is so brain dead. Revive me. I'm telling you to revive me. Come on. Finally. Oh, and then you're gonna come run into the lava after you revive me. That's great. That's great. It's good.
Got it, great, good.
So endgame, I imagine, is even tougher with the raids, heroic dungeons, and harder difficulties, like Reaper mode. There is also a hardcore server bracket for players to compete in, where if you die once, you lose your character. But obviously, the higher level you get to in the season, the better rewards you get for your account. If you can get past all the complex systems of Dungeons and Dragons Online, there is definitely a solid PvE experience here. Now, of course, like every other MMO out there, DDO does have a cash shop in a subscription service. The game is advertised as free to play, and you can earn a lot of what the game has to offer in the cash shop if you grind a ton. Many of the items in the cash shop are straight up pay to win at a glance though. There are literally items in it that give extra stats, more skill points, a higher level character, and the list goes on. The developers wanted you to earn these items through gameplay by completing quests, but the fact that you can just spend a couple $100 and slingshot yourself into a much more powerful standing thing is a bit scummy. If the items were meant to be earned, they should have had a different currency that can be spent to get those items. If the cash shop was all just cosmetic, then I'd totally be for it, but a lot of these cash shop items are just so expensive, it's no wonder that most of the community feels bad for new players trying to jump in. Most of the community will recommend you have several characters on alternate servers to farm cash shop currency, but unless you have help slogging through those quests, it's a huge grind. My advice is to complete the beginning quest hub, see if you like it, and if you do, grab the subscription. The subscription grants some goodies that will help ease you into the game. Now, someone like me who likes old school niche MMORPGs, I was able to find some enjoyment in DDO, but it's hard to recommend this game to anyone who isn't a fan of Dungeons & Dragons or old school dated MMOs. Population isn't booming like other games. It's dated in terms of graphics and mechanics, and while the game has a ton of customization and complexities, it will probably overwhelm a lot of those who are just jumping in. If you are a fan of the IP, I say give it a shot. At least for shits and giggles, since it is free to play. Treat it like real D&D. Play once a week, order a pizza, invite your friends over, and ultimately have all of them cancel on you last minute like a true Dungeons & Dragons campaign.
You son of a bitch.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video on Dungeons & Dragons Online. If you are on the fence about trying DDO, hopefully this video helps you make a decision. As always, click the like button and subscribe if you want to support the channel. All my social media links are in the description below, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much, everyone.